This month, we're talking about the power in relentless expectancy. The power in relentless expectancy. And last week, we talked about expectancy. We defined it. We really got into the meat of expectancy. And this today, I want to talk about the relentlessness of the expectancy. I want to talk about us having relentless expectancy. Relentless means it's never ending, it's ongoing, it's unyielding, it's nonstop. That's the kind of expectancy we have to have. That's the kind of expectancy we want. Expectancy being anticipation, excitement, exhilaration. And that's what we have to have. We have to have that kind of expectancy that's just over the top always. And so I'm inviting you to really, really move into that place of being relentless with your expectancy. Last week, I invited everyone to start to use an affirmation every day of something wonderful is happening in my life right now. I know it, I sense it, I feel it, I expect it, and I thank God for it. And that's something we have to recite over and over again with feeling, with meaning, with gusto, because that's where the creation is. The creativeness is always in the feeling, and so we have to put feeling into anything we're saying, feeling into what we're thinking, put feeling into our words, so that we can move into that place of experiencing that which we desire. Ernest Holmes says that expectancy speeds progress. And so when it can speed progress when we are really in that place of feeling it, of feeling what it is we desire, of feeling the excitement of it, the exhilaration of it. And so that's what I invite you to do. Just say that affirmation over and over again with feeling, with meaning, and really expect it to work. Expect it to work. And Holmes also says it doesn't matter. We have to stay in a continual state of expectancy. It doesn't matter how much good we are experiencing now. There's always more. Expect to experience even more, even greater good tomorrow. And so that's what we are moving into and moving through this month as we continue to talk about expectancy. But today, as I said, we're talking about being relentless with that expectancy. And so my topic today is around every corner, around every corner. Take a breath. Around every corner. And before I get into that, I just want to mention that right now we are going through it in our world, in our country, going through a period of expectancy because the COVID numbers are going down, and more places are opening up. More and more people have been vaccinated, and more people are getting out, and people are beginning to feel that sense of expectancy about, wow, maybe we can. Wow, maybe we can venture out. Maybe we're no longer bound to our homes or bound to solitude and whatever. Maybe we can have a sense of normalcy in our lives. Maybe our kids can go out. Maybe our kids can go back to school. So that there's an excitement in the air. There's expectancy in the air right now. And so the thing for us to do is to look for expectancy around every corner. Around every corner. Look for it in every aspect of our lives. Look for it in every aspect of our lives, not just one place over here and one place over there. No, we have to look for it in every aspect of our lives. We have to be open to it. Ernest Holmes says that a bucket turned upside down cannot, even on a cloudburst, cannot be filled. A bucket turned upside down, even on a cloudburst, cannot be filled. And what is happening when we have no expectancy? When we have no expectancy, that bucket is turned upside down. Expectancy turns our bucket right side up, and it can then be filled with the good that we desire and beyond. Because sometimes the good that we desire is limited, because that's what we know about. And so what expectancy does, it opens us up to all kinds of good. It opens us up to all that God has to give for us, all that God has for us, in store for us that we cannot even know. And so turn that bucket up, right side up. Turn that bucket right side up and allow God to fill it. Allow God to fill it with all the good. And so I'm inviting you today I have 3 points that I want to invite you to really look at. And one of them is leave no stone unturned. Leave no stone unturned. As we go through our lives, and we're talking about expectancy, the expectancy of good, look for good everywhere. Leave no stone unturned. Look around every corner. Expectancy is the big and. Expectancy is always more. There's always more. Expectancy is yes and. Yes, and thank you, and that's what expectancy is like. So we're always looking around every corner for the good because we never know where it's coming from. We never know where it's gonna. We know where it's coming from. We never know where it's gonna show up. We never know how it's gonna show up. And so when we walk through that place with expectancy, we walk through that place always expecting: is it over here? Is it over there? It's kind of, as I always said, it's kind of like an Easter egg hunt. If you've ever done that as a kid, doing the Easter egg hunt, you look behind every little branch, you look behind every little bush, looking for that Easter egg, looking for that gift. Whenever I think about around every corner and really expecting good, I'm reminded of my little grand dog. I had two little grand dogs, Yogi and Sweet Pea. And Sweet Pea was very, very attached to Rev.Sherry, and he did not want her out of his sight for a second. So whenever she was home, he was always right where she was. She'd almost fall over him sometimes when she'd get up to go someplace or try to walk through the kitchen or whatever. And if he were asleep and she happened to walk out of the room and he woke up and she wasn't there, he was frantic. He would run around looking for her, and he would run around and look everywhere. He'd run through the room, and then he'd look behind the chair, and then he'd look under the chair, and then there were times when he would move the throw pillow in the chair and look under the pillow. And it was always so funny because it never occurred to him, obviously, that she was not under the pillow, that she was not under the chair, but he expected to find her. So he would race through the house, and we would laugh so hard at him because he never gave up hope. When he was looking for her, he looked everywhere. And so whenever I think about looking around every corner, I think about him. And it makes me smile because he had that expectancy that he was going to find his mom every time he was looking for her. He had that expectancy that he would find her. And then when he found her, he was just overjoyed, like he hadn't seen her in hours. And it could have just been minutes ago that she'd walked out of a room. That's the kind of feeling, that's the kind of excitement, that's the kind of exhilaration we have to bring into our own lives. That's the kind of exhilaration that we have to bring into our own sense of expectancy, our own willingness to be open and available to all the good that God has for us. Because just ask yourself this: if you're not expecting good, then what are you expecting? If you're not expecting good, what are you expecting? That's a question that you have to ask yourself. If you're doubting that you're going to receive good and you're not expecting good, what are you expecting? And if it's not good, then why? Why? That's the question that we have to ask. Why? And so Holmes says that we have to have a childlike faith and expectancy, and that we have to have a consciousness of childlike, with a childlike consciousness of expectancy, so that and we get that by identifying with that eternal essence that is God within us. So we have to have a childlike faith and expectancy. And we get that by identifying with that eternal essence that is God within us. We have to have this childlike consciousness that has never been caught up in the prison walls of experience. We have to have a childlike consciousness that have never been caught up in the prison walls of experience. Because the experience can serve like prison walls for us, because we feel limited by the experiences that we've had. We feel limited by that which we know. We feel limited by that which has happened before. And as I've said before, and as Ernest Holmes says, principle knows no precedent. And so it doesn't matter what you've experienced before. It doesn't matter how things have gone before. We have to have that childlike faith. And when you think about children, it doesn't matter. They don't get caught up in failure. They don't get caught up in disappointment. They may be disappointed in the moment, but when the next thing happens, they're still expecting good. They're expecting whatever it is they're desiring. And there's a childlike faith that they have. And that's what we have to develop, that childlike faith, that childlike expectancy of good to come into our lives, because that is the way that God operates in our lives always. And so leave no stone unturned. Leave no stone unturned. Expect good everywhere. Expect good to show up everywhere. Look for it everywhere. Walk through your life with that sense of expectancy. And then the second point I want to make is don't allow yourself to be victimized by experience. Don't allow yourself to be victimized by experience, by what has happened in the past, by what has happened for somebody else. Don't allow yourself to be victimized by that, because we miss out on so much when we do allow ourselves to be victimized. And that's what it is. We start to feel like victims because things don't work out, because things aren't happening the way that we like them to happen, or because things aren't showing up the way we want them to. That's that. When we are in that, locked into that, what the experience has been, or what we can see with the physical eye as happening, then we're caught up in that victimization mode of experience. And so we don't want to get victimized, be victimized by our experience, because our experience also carries a lot of doubt with it. And we don't want to be victimized by our own doubt. We want to be open and receptive to just knowing that God works everything out. It's already worked out in the mind of God. And so being in that place keeps us in that place of expectancy, and it keeps us in that place of relentless expectancy. That place of relentless expectancy. Let's take a breath together. I got a call about 3 weeks ago from someone I didn't recognize the number when it came on my phone, and I generally don't answer those calls. I usually let them just go to voicemail. And for some reason, I picked that one up. I thought, let me answer this, and I answered it. And the person on the other end wanted to speak to Reverend McCreary. Well, I knew when she said that this is someone who didn't know me and who I didn't know, because people don't call me Reverend McCreary. And so I spoke with her, and she was telling me that she identified herself. She lived in New York, and her mother had lived in Florida, and her mother had passed away back in January. But they've been unable to have any kind of memorial service because of COVID. They couldn't travel and all that. And the funeral, or the memorial service, was going to take place in Phoenix. So she needed a memorial service officiant to handle this memorial service for her mother. Now, she called me on a Tuesday. This was going to happen Friday at 11 o'clock. And I was not available at that time, but I was so surprised that she was talking to me and she was sharing so much with me. And she said that she just knew that she was supposed to call me. And I said, how did you get my number? How did you find out about me? And she said, I Googled it. I said, what did you Google? She said, I Googled memorial service officiant in Arizona, and your picture came up. And I said, that's all you put in? And she said, yeah, memorial service officiant in Arizona, and your picture came up and your information came up. So I took a deep breath, because I was getting the feeling that God's fingerprints were all over this. So I knew that I needed to pay attention, because there's no reason that my picture should come up or my name should come up if someone is seeking an officiant in Phoenix, let alone in Arizona. But she said that my picture came up and my information came up. So she called me, hoping that I would be able to do this memorial service for her. So as it turned out, it was going to be on Friday. She wanted it was going to be at the National Memorial Cemetery, which is the military cemetery. And she wanted to know, could I please do this service for her? So I told her I was not available, but that I would I knew someone who could possibly handle it for her. And I would call her back. I took her number, and I called a friend of mine who specializes in memorial services. That's what he does a lot of. And he does a lot of the services at the National Memorial Cemetery. And I knew when I saw that name of that cemetery that this is the one, that, because I'd never heard of it until he told me about it. And I called him, and he said, I'm available on Friday. He said, and it's so funny, because I was just praying that I would have more memorial services coming in. I have more opportunities to serve families by doing those services. And I really do like going to the National Memorial Cemetery. Did I say God's fingerprints were all over that when this woman first called me? because this was already worked out in the mind of God. All she needed to do was to follow that guidance that she was getting, to Google an officiant. She Googled and got me. And then I called the person that I know, and everything worked out perfectly. He was available. He did the service. I connected the two of them. Everything worked out perfectly. But it was because she didn't get caught up in the what the experience was like. She didn't know anybody in Phoenix. She didn't know how to do whatever. She didn't know it any minister. She didn't know if she could get somebody that late. And all those things, those questions that come up for her, and she just decided to try anyway. She just decided to try anyway. And she tried, and it worked perfectly, which is the way it always works, because that's the way God always works, perfectly. God always works perfectly. And so when we cannot be victimized by our own experience, by our own doubt, then we can just open up and just allow that bucket to be filled. Allow that bucket to be filled with the goodness of God. That's what we can do. And so let's just take a breath right now as we just feel into that. Feel into that bucket being filled. Just turning that bucket right side up and just allowing it to be filled with the glory and the goodness and the gifts of God, the blessings of God. That is how we can walk through our lives, as we walk through with this sense of expectancy. So this third point that I'd like you to be with is create a space. Create a space for God to show up and show out in your life. Create a space for God to show up and show out in your life. And we create a space with our expectancy. When we are expecting, we have expecting good. We have all this space. We have all this spaciousness. And so when we create that space, when we open ourselves up, God just shows up. And when God shows up, God shows out. So determine, how do you create that space? How are you going to create that space for what it is you want? How are you going to create a space? How can I let that be your constant question? How can I create a space for God to show up and show out in my life? How can I create that space? I had a client, spiritual direction counseling client, for many years, and several years ago, she was married and had one child, and they wanted to add to their family. They wanted to have another baby. And they had been trying for a while, and she had 6 miscarriages. She had 6 devastating miscarriages. And we would talk, and I was constantly say, you don't give up hope. You know, that's the one thing. You what you want is a child. We talked about the possibility of adoption. We talked about different things, and she wasn't always open initially to things. And then she decided to give up attachment. We talked about giving up attachment to how it was going to show up, because what she wanted was a child. What she wanted was an addition to her family, the perfect addition to their family. And so what we started to do was to first of all, I had her create a nursery in her house, create a nursery for the baby that she was ready to welcome into her family. And so she created this nursery, beautiful nursery, and be sure and put a rocking chair in there so that you can sit in there, and that's where you do your spiritual practice every day. That's where you do your meditation. That's where you do your prayer. That's where you do your journaling. Your spiritual practice is to be done in this nursery, because you want this place to be filled with the presence of God. And so I lived in California at the time. She was in California. So sometimes I would go to her house and we'd have our sessions, and we would have our sessions in the nursery, praying this baby in, bringing this baby in. And then I moved back to Ohio, and we had telephone sessions, and we still did our sessions with her being in the nursery, and her constantly fixing up this place and creating this room, creating this space for God to show up. Creating this space for God to show up as this child that they've been waiting for so long. And so time passed. We don't let expectancy and patience can go hand in hand. They are not mutually exclusive. We can be expectant and we wait, because God knows no time. The only time that God knows is now. The only time that God knows is now. So it doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter how long it's been. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. The only time that God knows is now. And so we continue to do this work together. We continue to do this preparation and create this space for this baby. And then finally, one day she got a call from a friend who knew of a young woman who was pregnant and who was going to be giving birth pretty soon, and she was going to be allowing the baby to be adopted. And so my friend, my client, met with the mother, and they talked. And the first thing that the mother told her was that she wanted to have an open adoption. And initially, my client friend remembered that this was something a week or two before then she would not even have considered. But she said, as this mother was telling her about wanting this open adoption, all she could think about is this baby could never have too much love. That means that there'll be an additional person to love the child. There'll be an additional person to shower this baby with love. And so she agreed to this open adoption. And so they were selected, as she and her husband were selected as the family for the new baby that was to come. And when the mother went into labor, the family was at the hospital, and my client was able to bring the baby home from the hospital, a newborn, bring the baby home and take it into that nursery that had been created and had been waiting in that space, had been waiting for this baby, the perfect addition for this family, the perfect family for this baby was right there waiting. Everything came together, everything worked together. And they brought this bundle of joy home. And he has really been a bundle of joy for them. He has really been a wonderful addition. They have really been a bundle of joy for him and this whole family, and for the birth mother. All of them, all of it works together. All of it works together. He's now 13 years old. And it's unbelievable when sometimes I talk with her on Zoom, and I've seen him walk through, and it's just impossible for this little baby to be taller than I am. Well, not taller than I am, but almost as tall as his mother. It's not very hard to be taller than I am. But he's 13 years old, and that's just unbelievable at this point. God just showed up, and God just showed out. He was just, the baby was just, and has been, this child has been a wonderful child. He's been a wonderful addition. He's been very precocious and very smart. Just so many things, so many things. So much love has been brought into this family's life. So much love has been brought to this child. All of this happens when we have the expectancy. There was no way that she could have known what she was in for when she opened herself up to the very best addition to her family that God could give her. There was no way she could have known how God was going to show up as this baby. There was no way she could know how this whole situation that had started out. She could have been caught up in the experience of having had all the miscarriages and being down and disappointed and doubting that she would ever have an addition to the family. She could have gotten caught up in all that, but she didn't. She didn't. She knew that, God is in the midst of all this. We continue to go through. God is in the midst of all of this. God is working it out. Trust God in all ways, in all things, in all ways, in all things, and create that space for God to show up. And then recognize that the only time God knows is now. And so the only time that God knew then was now. When the baby showed up, it was now. It didn't matter all the years before. It didn't matter what had happened before. It didn't matter all the disappointments and whatever. None of that mattered, because right here, right now was what mattered. And right then and there, right now, for her and for her family and for her daughter, who had the brother that she wanted. It was wonderful. Everything worked out. Everything worked out. That family, that household, that oh, the word isn't coming, but that space was filled to overflowing with God's love. That space that seemed empty was filled to overflowing with God's love, with God's blessings, with God's gift of itself as what they needed, as what they wanted, for all concerned. It was for the highest good for all concerned. And so this is what I'm saying to you: create a space, whatever that space may be. It doesn't have to be a nursery. It can be whatever it is. whatever it is, create a space and then just know that it is filled with the power and the presence and the love and the light and the peace and the joy and the harmony and the blessings that is God itself. That's how God shows up. And then when we allow that space for God to show up, God shows out. And God shows out by bringing much more than we could have imagined. God shows out by bringing much more than we couldn't even fathom. We couldn't even imagine. She could never have imagined the joy that this family would have experienced with this child, and the joy that this child could have experienced with this family. And that's just one case of so many that we all know. We all know that we can't even imagine. Our physical eye cannot see. We cannot even create the vision ourselves to visualize for the good that God brings into our lives. And that's what expectancy does for us. That's what expectancy does for us. It opens us up. It allows us to turn that bucket right side up and just hold that empty bucket there and just allow it to be filled up with the goodness of God in each and every moment of each and every day. And so what I invite you to do is to remember these things. Leave no stone unturned. Leave no stone unturned. Look around every corner for the goodness of God. Don't be victimized by experience. Don't be victimized by experience. And then create a space for God to show up and to show out. That's what we have to do as we walk this path of relentless expectancy. Be relentless in that expectancy. Be relentless in opening up to the goodness of God and recognizing that God is all there is. The only power, the only presence, the only life. Recognizing that the allness and the fullness of God is right where we are always. Always. And so I'm inviting you to take a breath as we turn within in this moment and just allow ourselves to be filled up with this only power, this only presence, this only mind, this only breath that is our very life. Recognizing that this onlyness that is God is our very life. That the allness and the fullness of God is right where we are always, in each and every moment of each and every day. That there's nothing that can separate us from this allness and this fullness that is God. That we are each made in the image and likeness and out of God itself. Out of God itself. Out of God itself. This mother, father, God principle, this divine mother that nurtures us, that loves us, is our very life. It is our very life. And so just moving into this place of knowing that this is my life, I speak this word for each of us this day. Just knowing that that divine mother within each of us is nurturing, is loving, is lifting us up, is right where we are always, is guiding us, is directing us every step of the way. And so we just breathe into this knowing. We breathe into this space. And we just allow this divine mother to have full sway with each of us this day. Just speaking a word of wholeness, speaking a word of healing in the body temple, where there's a need for healing, where there's a need for releasing, letting go of dis-ease of any kind. Just knowing that every organ, cell, tissue, function of a body that needs healing is filled with the radiant healing presence of God. And we just allow that to just be, to take hold right here and right now, just knowing that by the word that's being spoken, healing is happening. Where there's any loss, there's healing. There's healing to broken hearts. There's healing from any sense of loss, healing for anyone who's grieving this day. The great comforter, the divine mother comforts, nurtures, lifts us up, guides, directs, heals that broken heart. Any sense of lack or limitation of any kind is released and let go by that principle of life itself, that is abundance itself, that is prosperity itself, that shows up in our lives as all needs being met in each and every moment of each and every day. Whatever that need may be, God shows up as that thing itself, fulfilling all needs, no matter what we name them. We just move into that place of trust, letting go of doubt, letting go of insecurity, letting go of fear, letting go of anything that could block or hinder. We release, we open up, we let go, we open up and just allow that healing presence of God to be established in each and every life, in each and every life, each and every moment. And so this word goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day, knowing that right where each one is, the power and the presence of God is. This word goes out to government officials who are in the process of decision making, knowing that God guides every decision, that God guides every choice, that God is working in and through each one for the highest good of all, for the highest good of all, bringing unity in, but their unity exists in the midst of the apparent division. And so unity is showing up in ways that we could not even imagine. For God is in the midst. For God is in the midst. And so I just pause now momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer. You may speak their names silently or loud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is. I know that God is in the midst of every situation, every circumstance, every event. God is in the midst of it. God is in the midst. God is right where each person is, just as God is right where each of us is, right here and right now, always. There's no way that we can depart from that presence of God. And so I just simply say thank you, Father, Mother God, for the perfect manifestation of the word spoken here this day. Thank you for the wholeness. Thank you for the healing. Thank you for everything. I know, I know that all is well. For I know that all is God. And I just simply allow it to be. I simply allow it to be. And so it is.